What is up, YouTube? This is Rob from RP Model Railroads. I'm excited to share with all of you the latest updates and new additions to my Ephrata Valley Railroad HO-Scale layout. Probably the most important additions to the layout recently have been grade crossings, where road meets rail. Here we see the main road that runs through Industryville with two grade crossings. Both of these are laser-cut wood crossings made by Blair Line that I bought off eBay. But I had to do a little bit of customization so these would work with my old-school brass rail plastic snap track. I used my oscillating tool with sandpaper attachment to go ahead and sand down the one edge of that center wood piece so that it would fit properly in the snap track. But once I did that, the Blair Line crossings fit perfectly, and I superglued them in place on the plastic snap track so they won't go anywhere. Now, to achieve that stained wood effect, I used a Crayola brown marker and colored up the wood. And then, to take away from the somewhat purplish hue of the marker after it dried on the wood, I used a black wash, or black paint that's been watered down, and a paintbrush, and went over the grade crossings once, and that made them look a whole lot better. So I'm satisfied with how they look. Now, the two crossing gates there, they're both 3D printed plastic models that I bought from a seller on Etsy, and I'll leave the link to that Etsy seller down in this video's description so you'll be able to check it out. But anyway, these 3D printed crossing gates are actually pretty awesome and highly detailed for being 3D printed models. I went ahead and spray painted them silver and then sent them to my good friend Aaron, and he did the rest of the detailing work on these, and they turned out fantastic. So both the gates are down, and the doodle bug is about to cross over the grade crossing on the road in Industryville. And here's the second main grade crossing on the layout where road meets rail, where Main Street crosses over the two tracks and then disappears into the backdrop of the layout. For this grade crossing, I used two Blair Line 2-lane laser-cut wood crossing kits and modified them in the same way that I did the curved grade crossings in Industryville so that it would work with the brass rail snap track. Now, as far as the HO-Scale crossing equipment goes, there are actually four separate pieces. Two 3D printed crossing gates that have been spray painted and fine detailed by Aaron, and two overhead or gantry signals that are also 3D printed, plastic, and from the same Etsy seller as the 3D printed crossing gates. And they're actually quite well detailed for 3D printed models, and they were fairly cheap. So once again, be sure to check out that Etsy seller if you are interested in finding 3D printed plastic grade crossing equipment for your layout, because with a little bit of detailing, they really make a grade crossing stand out. I added a few more wood grade crossings on the layout in specific areas to serve as access roads across the tracks for maintenance of way equipment or for a different purpose. Here we see a one-lane grade crossing with a Tyco railroad crossing sign. Right here, crossing over the two tracks on the 4x8 section of the layout that would allow maintenance of way trucks and vehicles to enter the Norristown Yard area and cross over the two tracks, and also have access to the Norristown Signal Tower. And here's a more complex grade crossing system on the layout. There's three curved wooden grade crossings for a dirt and stone access road to both the Ephrata Coal Company and also to Penzo Oil Company. And the three crossings allow vehicles to cross over three tracks, the inner siding for storage, and the two main tracks on the 4x8 main line. Last but not least, we have this small grade crossing here with two one-lane wooden grade crossings. I built up the stone here around the grade crossings, and it's been glued down since with homemade scenic glue to look like the stone's been built up on purpose for maintenance of way vehicles that have to cross over the two tracks to get to the two engine shed buildings, because there are now two engine shed buildings in Norristown Yard. The main engine shed and now the single stall engine shed, which I like to call the breakdown shop, that I added to the layout, which I think I'll briefly talk about this. I actually found this engine shed on eBay, already weathered, already assembled, and as soon as I saw it, I figured it would work out perfectly for siding number 5 in Norristown Yard. That is just a long straight track. So now that building back there is the breakdown shop, and of course the original Pola Norristown Yard engine shop is still in full operation. The next biggest change that happened on the layout is the moving of West Narton Junction. So there used to be a old red station here on this corner of Industryville, and it honestly kind of blocked the sewer plant and the rest of the road with the Spartan Tire tractor trailer and the car on the backdrop. That station kind of blocked that. So I moved West Narton Junction over here on this part of the layout. And it just makes a lot more sense because in its previous location, West Narton Junction was actually sitting behind the engine shop in Norristown Yard, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, practically speaking, for a train station or a junction station to be sitting in an engine yard, necessarily, unless it was like a supply building or something like that. So I moved West Narton Junction over to this corner of Industryville, and this is its new permanent home. The space behind the engine shop is now being used as a storage area for Ephrata Valley maintenance of way equipment. We see here a high rail welding truck as well as an excavator, crane, and side boom, and a new visitor and addition to the Ephrata Valley Railroad, Titus the Triceratops. Now, this corner of the layout has had a big renovation. This used to be the area where I had my power packs installed, but I've since moved my Tyco Pack 4 dual power pack that runs the two main tracks on the layout down to a piece of plywood that I attached as a shelf that I'm not just using to store power packs, but also for moving vehicles and train cars on and off the layout when needed. So that opened up this corner, and it is now the Ephrata Valley Maintenance of Way Department shop. This building right here is actually a kit-bashed Tyco piggyback truck terminal. I cut off the part of the building that would have hung off the layout that had the office and the staircase. I cut that part of the building off, glued it back together, and then sent it to Aaron to get details. So besides the signs, he also painted the entire building a brick red to match the breakdown shop and Norristown Yard engine shop. He painted the roof black and painted the garage doors and windows and stuff like that green. Even though they were already green, he repainted them to go ahead and match the Norristown Yard buildings. And as you can see here, as this is a maintenance of way shop, there's the maintenance of way fire eater, high rail fire truck in one door. There's a high rail 1960s crew cab pickup truck sitting in that garage door. And then there's just other maintenance of way equipment for the EV parked outside the shop, like this front end loader or payloader, a bulldozer back there, and then here we have a fuel truck. So this scene is going to see different maintenance of way vehicles over time, but I'm quite proud of how this little scene turned out, and it really makes this corner of the layout beyond deciduous curve stand out. Now I know in the last layout update video I gave a pretty well-detailed description of telephone pole placement on the layout. But there has been a slight change for the telephone poles that cross over the tracks here in front of Mount Flattop. There used to be a large center telephone pole. That's gone now. So in its place is a third telephone pole that actually matches the other two that Aaron built. Now I did have to trim down the other two taller telephone poles. You might actually recognize that. So all three would be the same height, but I did that and I'm proud of how it looks. So now there are three identical telephone poles with standard electric triangle signs on them and reflective signs as well that represent power going from the town of Ephrata to Industryville, crossing over the tracks in front of Mount Flattop. Now there have been several new HO-Scale vehicle additions to the layout from Aaron that I'm not going to detail in the video, but they will be seen in future videos. But I do want to talk about these unique kit-bashed vehicles that Aaron created for the layout that are actually quite small. So this right here is an HO-Scale Cushman, and it is literally HO-Scale that Aaron kit-bashed from bits and pieces. And as you can see, as I pan out, the little Cushman industrial vehicle is actually serving Norristown Tower. Here is another HO-Scale kit-bashed Cushman industrial vehicle, a blue one sitting here on the loading dock at Spartan Tire Company. And last but not least, here's another HO-Scale Cushman. This is a flatbed style industrial vehicle with a wheelbarrow load on the back that is parked behind Storty Tool and Die Company. Yet another kit-bashed HO-Scale Cushman by Aaron. Well, I certainly hope you all enjoyed this layout update video documenting the new additions and changes made to my Ephrata Valley Railroad HO-Scale layout. Be sure to stay tuned for future rail fanning videos.